Welcome, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I am the Revolutionary Goth. My name is Lenore, and in today's video, I'm going to be making a video about a topic I have wished to discuss for a long time now. This is a general video about what goth is and what it is not, and possibly clearing up some of the misconceptions you, the viewer, has about us. This is going to be unscripted and is going to also simultaneously serve as a channel introduction. It is going to be less well researched than my future videos, as it is more my thoughts and again an introduction to me, what goth means to me, and what it is not. Also going over some brief history. So starting off, just straight off the bat, if your perception of goth involves some hypersexualized image of a goth girl, that is not what goth is, and you are most likely referring to this, which is an egirl, and is not goth. So, in order to counter that message and these preconceptions, I'm going to tell you what goth is. Goth is not purely an aesthetic, and there are many aspects that it takes in regards to being a goth. What is confusing for people outside of the subculture is that one could present themselves in the most orthodox trad goth way possible and still not be goth. Why is that? Well, that's because goth birthed out of the punk movement and was a post-punk movement. And it is from these roots that goth draws many political elements and anti-capitalist elements, including anti-consumerism. Being goth emerged out of the bat caves of the 1980s and was about expression and not conflating to the mainstream norms. Being outside of the normal scope of what is acceptable also means rejecting the predominant political system and conditioning of capitalism. So in order to properly consider yourself a goth, you must be outside of the current status quo and frame of reference for how our society operates. And this is often reflected by fashion and makeup that draws attention to ourselves that normal people may not deem acceptable. You could still hold on to capitalist beliefs and ideas that are not really compatible with the actual emerging ideology that was goth. Meaning many, as a result of the internet and a lack of gatekeeping, have essentially embraced goth as an aesthetic and a commodity to consume. As with many subcultures, they are commodified, watered down, and their radical elements are often stripped from them. What I'm saying and what I'm getting at is that goth is not your fetish, and it is not a aesthetic or new product for you to consume to fulfill the endless void of alienation you feel as a result of capitalism. Goth will never be these things, and it should be separated as such. It is inherently a radical movement, although it does hold no direct political affiliation. It is left-wing and against the current status quo and thus ultimately capitalism. It advocates for an individual free from these societal confines that keep us down. It advocates for self-expression, and many of the early bat caves and goth groups, both the men and women within these groups and bands and labels, were often highly androgynous, would share clothing amongst each other, would create their own clothing. Again, there's that anti-consumerist element, also just relating to self-expression and a lack of, money then. But it does also tie into those anti-capitalist elements. All of this is to say is that goth is a punk movement. While it is not punk, it is a musically post-punk movement, which from some of the earliest projects and albums which you can consider goth, you can draw very many anti-capitalist themes from them. Even in The Cure's which is what I would argue the first truly gothic album, much of the music's lyrical themes center around capitalism and alienation, if you want to use a Marxist term. But it is also important to note that goth is a music subculture, but unlike metal, which is a subculture predominantly based around the consumption of that music culture, it is not purely that, and it is still a movement and subculture which is dedicated to individualism, self-expression, and is centered around identity and a rejection of societal norms. Thus, to be goth, you cannot be conservative, you cannot be bigoted, and you cannot have backwards views on society and gender roles. So I felt it was important to make this video because as goth has been commercialized and commodified, many people have the wrong idea for what goth is. So in summary, while this was a short video, goth is political. I don't care how you want to spin it. If you are perfectly fine with the current established order or capitalism, and you constantly consume new products, and you view goth as an aesthetic to newly consume, you are not goth. If you hold backwards traditional ideas of gender and are just a backwards conservative person in general, you are not goth, and you cannot be. And also, goth has an element of strangeness or an attraction to things that are odd. Most goths I know have an interest in collecting oddities, skulls, weird objects, like strange creatures. I, for instance, love centipedes and spiders, and certain things that other people are bothered by, I see beauty in. This means that there is a certain I don't want to say non-neurotypical way of thinking amongst goths. It sort of is. It's a way of thinking that is outside of what most people deem acceptable or normal, and thus all of these things tie together to make someone goth. There are just some people who are goth and are not, and that's okay. You can pick a different subculture, you can wear our clothing, do our makeup, but do not call yourselves goth. And that is why I am choosing to use the label Revolutionary Goth, and if you share my principles, I encourage you to do the same. I will be making many commentary videos in general, some political, some not, and all in all, it will be from the perspective of a goth person myself. So if you did enjoy that, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you like, you can check out my other social medias in my Linktree bio. And yeah, I hope all of you have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.